Welcome, Roman. Please, can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for having me, Joseph. And yeah, I'm Roman. I'm one of the co-founders of BetterContact. We are a waterfall enrichment solution in the contact data space. And yeah, we are enriching emails, mobile numbers, leads. And I think we will go more in depth into these topics later on. But yeah, again, thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for being here. It's great to have you. So, just when it comes to contact data, what are we optimizing for in terms of email and mobile? Like, what are the metrics we want to kind of maximize?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, on the email side, it's I would say more straightforward topic, right? You basically want to make sure that an email is, first of all, SMTP valid, meaning that you basically send a ping to email server to see if the email that you enrich is actually an email that would land in the inbox. And what's also quite interesting, which is like a more, I would say, recent market, is something called catch-all verification, right? This didn't really exist back then, something which was what people were pretty much afraid of, right? Because there's like a thing called a catch-all server. I mean, this is something we can also go into. And just like these two things, SMTP verification, catch-all verification, and always making sure that this is actually given, right? Because I think many people aren't really aware of the consequences like sending to invalid emails can have, right? It's not only that your inboxes are not working anymore. If you like doing it on a company domain, right? You could basically have bad, like worse SEO rankings and all of that. So it's a super important topic.
Yeah, this is interesting. So, I think I really want to dive into the catch-all verification, what we need to get. I think before we do that, I think we need to just understand the difference between like a data provider versus like a waterfall enrichment tool. Could you kind of talk us through like the different ways to get data, and then why a tool like BetterContact is maybe better, and then we can start to talk about like how we verify. Do we verify using the provider, or do you verify your side using another tool so you can kind of verify across all the different providers, if that makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe to understand what like waterfall enrichment and these single providers are, it could be quite interesting how we basically got to creating this method waterfall enrichment, right? So when I was working in like job startups, also very briefly in like a corporate role, my job was always to find like emails, mobile numbers, right? And the issue back then was that all of these single providers in a way were complementary, right? So I had like 100 people where I needed to find the contact data for, and I went to like contact provider A. They found like 40 emails. Then I went to like contact provider B. They found like 10 additional emails, right? So the thing basically goes on, and I always needed to go to like finance, asking, can I get like an additional license, right? So quite, I would say, yeah, time consuming and also annoying. So basically, the idea now is when you have 100 people, you don't need to go to like provider A, provider B, right? Because we are the aggregate of their capabilities, meaning that you can go to a tool like BetterContact that's offering waterfall enrichment, and then all of the providers will be requested in the background, and it's all running through like one account. And yeah, so of course there's always like pros and cons for both options, right? Like using different like single providers, using like waterfall enrichment tool. And I think it all comes down to how important the coverage is for you. I mean, it's quite, I would say, also transparent to see that like a waterfall tool is like often more expensive at like first glance, right? Because there's all these verification layers, there's all of these APIs, and and how important it is for you to get good data and also the most data for your reachable TAM, right? I think this is like a pretty like question where I could go like deep into for like 20 minutes, but I mean ultimately waterfall enrichment is for those people that first of all want to find as many contact data, as many emails, as many mobiles for their prospects, reach out to as many as possible. And secondly, that they are also assured that this contact data is like valid, right? And it also is like usable ultimately.
Yeah, that's interesting because, like you say, waterfall, you're going through more providers, so you're going to get the most. And then my question to you is, how do you make sure that you get the best? And so my questions around that is the waterfall enrichment stopping at email found, or is it stopping at verified email? Another question is, are you using the provider, say Prospio, saying it's verified, or are you doing the checks your side? But then also like the order of providers, and so just how you maximized quality.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is definitely a process which changed a lot since we started, right? Around like 2.5, 3 years ago. And how it basically started out, we had like all of these providers just chained up, right? Provider A, provider B, provider C, and then trusting the provider saying this is valid, this is invalid. And the current process is that we have quite a lot of, I would say, advanced like verification layers, right? Intelligence behind it. So talking about the verification side, we don't trust the provider's status of invalid or valid. We actually use like a additional waterfall for validation, right? This is super important because we have a lot of data, right? We're working with a lot of different companies which also have a lot of volume. So we get a lot of data that allows us to see that on average, around like 20, like I think on the last like batch, it was like 27% of the data provided by these providers on the email side is like invalid, right? So if we would have pushed that back, we would have pushed 27% invalid emails, right? So we are making sure that if provider A gives us an email, we go through the validation waterfall. If it's invalid, we're going to the next provider, right? So we also bear the cost if it's actually invalid. And yeah, this is how it works on the validation side. I mean, we can also go a bit deeper into this a bit later. And yeah, on the question regarding how can we determine which data provider is being used first, right? There we have like some type of algorithm. We call it Better AI, and it's quite helpful because what we've seen is that one provider might be stronger in one geography, in one industry. As you said, it's like Prospia, right? Is strong in, let's say, France, and very strong in the SaaS industry, right? But might have like weaknesses in the US for like the manufacturing industry, right? So the good now with all the data that we have is we are capable of seeing the lead that you provide to us, right? Let's say you provided us a list of um, German telemarketers, right? And now we know which provider sequence we need to build to like maximize the yeah, valid output ultimately, right? And also make sure that the best data is given out, right? And coming to this process took us a lot of time, right? I mean, we were like for this last years only doing that, right? Focusing on the best email and phone enrichment side. Um, but yeah, it's definitely paying off because it's like not that easy to like build a waterfall that also has some intelligence to it. Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're not building like a default waterfall, which is average best across the board. You're tailoring to geography and industry as well, um, which is really cool. And then you mentioned as about verification being done your side, and then I think the first question we talked about catch-alls and stuff. So I think this would be good. Let's talk about that. So what are the verification layers? Is it we're going to see if it's a catch-all, and then are you then doing is it a deliverable catch-all we'll send to what
Yep.
does that process look like? And I'm just going to bolt another question on. I know there's a lot of questions, but how are we distinguishing between valid emails and verified? Are we saying valid? It's not that there's not enough checks, so we ignore valid. We focus on verified.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, regarding the like first question, the verification, right? What I've mentioned at the beginning is that we don't rely on only one validation tool, right? This is what we did at the beginning, but we want sure that multiple providers are saying this is a right email or a right mobile number. right? And how it typically starts is that we put the email through like SMTP verification, right? Making sure that this is like an email that would land in the inbox, right? And if this is basically valid, we're using like 3 SMTP providers. Then we're also saying this is a valid email. This is something we're pushing to the user. But yeah, if it's invalid, then we go to the next provider. But if it's like considered catch-all, right, then we're going to the catch-all verifier. And there we see if this catch-all is actually a safe to send catch-all or a not safe to send catch-all, right? So the status is that we ultimately provide on the email side is the deliverable email, which is like valid, verified. Like we don't really see like a difference there because like in our opinion, this is basically a synonym. And we have the catch-all safe, and then the catch-all not safe and the undeliverable, right? The interesting part here is that most just stop at catch-all, right, and saying catch-all, this is something a risky email, right? This is also something how they're called. So we don't recommend you sending to it, right? But I mean, the new technology on the market, which is actually quite interesting, we're now also able to see if it's like a actually valid catch-all, so people can send to it with like super minimized bounce rates. Because yeah, catch-all verification is quite a complex topic, right? And I mean it is also quite a new, I would say, market invention, but already like super promising results. And yeah, definitely a big, I would say, list increaser, right? Because if you have like 100 people, typically like 20% of these are catch-all, right? And I mean, if you think about it, you can't reach out to these 20 people, or you shouldn't reach out, right? Because they are risky emails if you can't validate them. And what's also very interesting, what we really like about being able to offer like catch-all verification is that we offer our users to have like access to untouched leads, right? This is how we call them, because everyone is like saying catch all, risky. I don't want to send to them, right? So these are the leads that don't get spammed every day. I could of course be a bit like biased, but I mean breaking it down like very, I would say, yeah, pragmatically. So I mean the one thing that you will see when you have like rather low volumes, right, is that we have basically the exact same pricing, like as you said, like Prospio or something, right? It's like pretty similar, right? Because the big difference now is when you go to a Prospio, you have like big volumes, and then there are like offering bigger bulk discounts, right? Which we can't do in a way because we have like we're basically an aggregator, like a reseller. We don't own like any data of that. But yeah, so when it then comes to the lower volumes, I mean, basically our waterfall enrichment is a no-brainer. But then when it comes to the larger volumes, we still have like the, I would say, winning hand, like not we, but I would say waterfall enrichment. Because what's very interesting to see is that if you, for example, in a Clay or something like that, build the waterfall, right, with like all of these columns, verification is that the actual cost per verified email is actually quite high, because it can happen multiple times that you have provider A finding like the email Roman at Amazon.com, right, which is wrong. And then you go to the next provider and it finds again Roman at Amazon.com, right? So it happens quite often that you then have like a payment to provider A for Roman at Amazon.com, payment to the verification tool for invalidating that email, right? And then you go basically again paying to provider B for the exact same wrong email. And this is actually something we've seen that is yeah, quite expensive over time. And we're working a lot with agencies, right? Who are like very, I would say, cost aware. They're really like going for like cost efficiency. And yeah, they do a lot of testing, right? They're like not the easiest to sell to, but ultimately, what we've seen due to the simplicity, due to like cost savings for invalid data, that most of the times they are like preferring using something like that, like a waterfall enrichment tool, which is like centralizing it all in one, also bearing the cost for invalid data, versus building it themselves, right? Because you need a lot of subscriptions, there's different rollover limits, which are like different. You like burn a lot of credits because of that. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it all comes down to if it makes sense for your market, and I just like do some testing on that.
I think that's awesome that you bear that people are only paying for verified, validated data. That is really good. Um, I'm not going to bring up any competitors because I don't think it's right to do that. But how would you? Are there any other kind of differentiators, do you think, between BetterContact and other waterfall enrichment tools, as to kind of why small agencies or maybe larger software companies would want to use you over, say, an alternative?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be like very honest, like we don't have like a lot of direct competitors, right? I mean, we have like maybe two direct competitors who are like waterfall enrichment solutions, right? I mean, there are, which is correct, a lot of different providers which offer waterfall enrichment, right? But they offer this more within the context of their all-in-one solution, right? If you, for example, have a CRM, right, and they use also waterfall enrichment to offer the data to their users, right? But like really standalone waterfall enrichment solutions where you can say, I only need contact data. I don't need like a CRM. I don't need like a signal tool. This is actually quite a new market, right? And there aren't like a lot of competitors. And yeah, ultimately, which is actually quite hard for the user, is to see where are the differences, right? Because I mean, most have like very similar data providers like ours, right? And we also show them transparently. So there isn't like a very big difference in the um, data providers, right? So people could think I will just go for the like lowest price or whatever, but the difference is where I would say it's like for waterfall enrichment, the depth of data validation, right? I mean, this is something which needs a lot of experimentation, which needs a lot of, I would say, expertise. I mean, we've been we've been the longest in the market for waterfall enrichment itself, and yeah, we had a lot of experimentations, a lot of like working on our validation waterfall. So what we've seen on a lot of A and B tests is that our data is like the most accurate. It could be that there's like a waterfall enrichment tool which has like maybe 1 to 2% more data found, right? But this is something we most likely also found, but invalidated, right? And I mean, there's also like reports which from like something like a Clay, right, where we always like rank basically first place. They're also like on the web and something. But what I always recommend, which is also like the beautiful thing about the data space, most tools have a free trial, right? You can just like go there, upload a list, or try a few contacts, and there is like no, I would say, subjectivity. Either the data is good or it's bad, right? So I recommend everyone to just go through these tools, right? Start the free trial and then do some testing. I think this is like the most fair way. And then there is also like no need for like anyone to convince you, say we have the best data, whatever, right? Because it's like so easy to test.
Yeah, wow. And then yeah, S- s- so in terms, I'm just coming back to we're kind of going like a lot, but it's super interesting. So with changing the order for different industry, different geography, how did you how have you got the data to know that? Have you just basically experiment with like basically all the different combinations in the different regions,
Yeah.
and which ones come out with the most coverage or the best accuracy?
Yeah, exactly. So what we are doing, or rather like what we are more on a constant basis experimenting with is, as you said, like different combinations, right? So we have like large scale users which are basically allowing us to change the order with the enrichments that they do, right? So for example, if they we do on day one, right, we do like this order, on day two we do this and that order, right? So each provider gets like a large amount of volume, right? So we can then basically see this provider based on like this like sprint now is very good in industry X, industry Y, right? And we've been doing these tests like over and over, and this allows us to gather like a good amount of data, right? And then we see patterns, and yeah, these are like super insightful. And then based on that, we can like tell our algorithm this is like how it's done, right? This is like where these data providers are strong and where they're weakened, and then based on that, basically keeps learning.
Yeah. Nice. And you mentioned you're integrated with Clay. What was the process? What was the process like with you know, meeting them for the first time? How what how did you end up building that integration? Like, could you share kind of how all that happened?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have like a super good relationship with Clay, right? We also recently in December 2025 did like a Clay X BetterContact Christmas party, right? We did this in Berlin in person. Was super nice. Was actually also my first in-person event, which we basically a whole course. So this was great. And yeah, so around 2.5 years ago, so pretty like close to the time when we were like going to market, they reached out to us, right? They were trialing the product, right? They didn't really, I don't even know if they had like more than one or two contact data providers in their tool, right? And they were asking if they could like integrate BetterContact, right? This was 2.5 years ago, and back then, which was like, of course, a pity, we weren't able to offer that, right? Because the providers that we integrate back then, they weren't really like fine with that, right? We didn't really have agreements in place that we could like resell their data. But yeah, like 1.5 years later, then, right? So basically, beginning of last year, we got back in touch, right? I mean, of course, the team is super busy. They're growing like crazy, and yeah, so we got back in touch, and it was quite a long process until then, right? They also do their data testing and all of that. And then, yeah, basically around a year ago, we finally got integrated, right? After lots of back and forth. And I know there's like a huge list of, yeah, other like companies that want to get integrated, right? Because of course, Clay is like the big thing currently in the GTM space. So, yeah, I mean, one thing that I can, I think, give as a tip is that community, like Clay is very community driven, right? So they really appreciate if you actively also as like a company that wants to get integrated in their tool, like engage with their like community, right, on their Slack channel, and then also doing like events, doing content about them, for example, which is a pretty cool play in my opinion, is um like creating an HTTP integration that you distribute to your users. And when they see there's good usage, then of course, there's like a no-brainer to integrate. But yeah, I think these tips are those that I usually give because I get the question quite a lot from other SaaS companies, and they're like quite helpful, I think.
Wow. That's cool. And I'm looking at your some of your other integrations now. So we've got Clay, Zapier, HubSpot, RB2B. Um, could we talk about like some of the use cases? Like I would say um like are people say one use case is maybe they upload data into your platform directly and they can enrich. Um, I'm not sure that was, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But another one might be HTTP API, Clay integrations. But like on the HubSpot side, CRM side, like CRM enrichment, do you guys get involved with that? And if so, like I guess just what are some of the most common use cases outside of Clay enrichment, that you're seeing?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, we have a pretty flexible API, right? So we've seen like super interesting use cases, right? One could be that there is like I would say I think it was a company that was very much going onto these like conferences, right? So they had like our like app integrate into their like scanner, right? So they basically scanned these badges of participants, and then they found the email of these people, right? So this is like one use case, which is of course very niche, but just like to see, just to say that there's like basically endless opportunities. But on the CRM side, we are like a HubSpot partner, right? We first of all have a native CRM integration in HubSpot, meaning we have an app inside HubSpot, and we have an auto enrich, right? So this is something which is quite interesting for like the SMBs, enterprise customers who say, I want like as soon as there is a new person filling out a form in HubSpot, I want to have like the phone number, right? So my SDRs can reach out to them, right? So this is like a pretty a good play that is like gaining more and more popularity. And yeah, this is that on the CRM side. We currently also work on like the Salesforce. We also have already existing integrations with like a Breakhold, right, which is like also quite a cool one. And yeah, I mean, other than that, we have like, as you said, our B2B, right? When there's like a website visitor that you can find the phone number to like reach out with them if they're qualified and have the intent. But yeah, these are like just a few integrations, but I would say these are like the most used ones.
Nice. That's interesting. And like kind of moving on to your go to market as well. Like what worked for you over like you say, I think you said earlier today you're one of the longest standing or one of the longest standing waterfall enrichment tools. But what's worked for you today? Are you dog fooding using your own product? And then what kind of your main sales stack? And yeah, how are you acquiring customers? Like via what channels are working? Um,
Yep.
and then obviously relating to ICP as well. Like I imagine targeting customers that are using Clay, using HubSpot, like technographics wise, but what other kind of things signal good customers for you?
Yeah, for sure. So, what is I think important to mention, we have like a very like small yeah, go to market function, right? When it comes to people like headcount. So we have like quite a lot of people on the product side, but on the um, like sales marketing side, we currently have like two people basically, which is like myself and like recently an SDR. And what has been working very well for us is like this all-bound system, right? I mean, I think this is like the highest leverage thing that a SaaS founder can do, right? When they are like basically wanting to keep the team very efficient, very lean. And this is basically um, getting like inbound and outbound combined and getting the best of both worlds, right? Because inbound, you have the issue that you can generate a lot of awareness, right? But you aren't able to like capture this maybe, right? Because you don't know, um, like you might know who's engaging, right? But you aren't reaching out to them directly. So these like warm leads turn cold quite quickly. And on the outbound side, right, you typically reach out very cold, right? People don't know who you are, so it's harder to sell. So we basically say inbound and outbound, right? This isn't our concept, but it's a concept that we very much like and are big fans of. So you say we generate a lot of awareness, right? This is through our own social media content, but we also have um, like luckily a lot of like great yeah, I would say people that post about us, right? Like lots of word of mouth, which is like super great. So we get a lot of social media attention, and then we capture that, right? We use like a Teamfluence for that, which allows us to see who is engaging with the content of our like yeah champions of us, and then we funnel that, we qualify that in Clay, right? See who is like an interesting lead for us on our based on our ICP. And what we do then is we channel them in tier one, tier two, tier three, and each of these tiers get a different treatment, right? So they either get like a phone call, they get a LinkedIn message, or they get a cold email. And yeah, this is like working super well for us. We have like this PLG um, like yeah, I would say go to market, right? Product led, meaning that people sign up, they check it out, so we don't need to have like too much human interconnection with like all of them. So yeah, I know this was like a bit chaotic now. I mean, it's a pretty like I would say multifaceted system, but yeah, this is basically what's working well for us, like this all bound being recommended by other people, word of mouth. um, but yeah, we definitely are planning to build up on like our sales function now, because it's getting quite a lot of inbound and quite overwhelming to handle.
Yeah, I imagine. But do you know what? After speaking to so many like founders that make it, it always just comes back to if you have an amazing product. I think Naval said recently he was like, you do sales when marketing hasn't worked, and you do marketing when product hasn't worked, and everything just comes back to the
Yeah,
product. um,
yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, of course, what also needs to be mentioned, like the product space is very saturated, right? And I mean, the trend is, of course, that saturation is going to increase by a lot. I mean, people say, which is of course true, to like some extent, it's easier to build software, right? Like it's easier to enter markets, right? So the barrier, like the barrier to entry decreases. So I think distribution is becoming more and more important, right? Because even if you have like a very great product, it might be like not enough to rely like on word of mouth, right? And like people are getting overflooded by things, right? So they just need to be like more handheld. I think this is like also a trend 2026, 2027.
Interesting. So you're looking to hire, potentially looking to grow your sales and all bound team. If you were looking to hire someone now, what traits would you want from this hire? Would you want them to be like an all bound sales marketer, or would you want to split them out and have sales guy, top of funnel person, inbound person, outbound person? How are you thinking about growing that going forward?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, um, I'm quite a big fan of like full cycle AEs, right? People that are like capable of taking like the full cycle, right? Being able to generate demand, also then being able to hold the demos, right? And I'm a very big fan of people that are also actively sharing like wins and fails on social media, right? So this is something we most likely will look for in the next hires, right? That they're also open to feed this all-bound system, right? Which is like that case generating demand through like some type of content. So this is will be quite important. And yeah, I mean, basically we're looking for a Swiss Army knife on the sales side, right? Which like for me includes someone that is able to generate the demand and then also being able to capture it and then being able to convert it, right? Because I'm not like the biggest fan of like these very siloed functions of like an SDR, an AE, and then all of that.
Yeah, it's almost like the silo works, like the when you have bigger companies, right? But for smaller teams, you want to have this full cycle AEs. Yeah, it's interesting. So
Yeah,
so
exactly.
comply. Let's talk about compliance because it is quite important for you guys. So GDPR, CCPA, DSGVO, like what are they? How do you comply with them? Does your tool work differently depending on which region, country you're in? And how do you stay compliant?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, um, what I think a lot of people don't really consider is that there are two sides to compliance, right? The first side is the data provider compliance, right? And the other one is the compliance of the people actually receiving the data, right? So starting off with the first side, right, which is the data provider, right? We of course need to make sure that the data that we source is being transmitted securely, right? And that this is like B2B data, right? That this is not like the personal email, like the roman@gmail.com. This is super important. And yeah, we also need to, of course, respect like opt-out mechanisms, right? It's always possible at any point in time to say through like our website, I don't want that our data is being transmitted here, right? And this is then going to go on the block list. So we won't ever again like push this data out, right? And this is like the most important parts, right? That we also don't store any like large amounts of data, right? Because we are a data aggregator, right? Like we don't own like the database. So this is also very important, like storing data not longer than 60 days and all of that. And on the other side, which is the side of the people that receive the data, that ultimately use the data, that buy the data from the data provider, what I think lots of people think is that they don't have any responsibility, right? That as soon as they receive the data from the provider, that this basically means how they can do with it whatever they want, right? So super important to be first of all like respectful, right? And when you reach out, to have like a legitimate interest, meaning that you should always have like a legitimate business interest when reaching out to a person, meaning that you are trying to sell a service based on like some type of intent, right? For example, a person signed up to a webinar, or also something like based on like some type of business connection, reaching out. So I think this is important to keep in mind. And then of course, just like which is I think just like a human like thing, that if the person says thank you for reaching out to me, I don't want to receive any more outreach, right? That they don't keep spamming them. I think this is also super important. So yeah, just to like sum it up, there should be like a legitimate interest, and the yeah, ultimately the will of the person should be like respected, right? If after the first outreach they say remove me from your list or don't call me again, then of course you shouldn't call them again or text them again. But yeah, I think these are like the compliance in a nutshell, right? And this like key term legitimate interest is super important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And in terms of like what your customers' success is, like say you work with a lot of agencies and things like that, is it like it comes back to what we said in the beginning, most coverage, so reach out to the most people, but also having good quality data so that you minimize bounces to preserve your deliverability, more positive replies now in the future. Are there any other benefits that people are seeing from your platform, or is it as simple as is it as simple as that?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, on the one side, you have the cost efficiency, right? This is like a point which I previously mentioned where we say, or rather they say us in their feedback, right? I was paying a lot of different data subscribers and like subscriptions, right? And it was like quite expensive to always pay for the invalid data, right? I had a lot of credits that were burned because of like rate limits, because or like credit rollovers rather. And I didn't use them in 1 month, right? So it was super annoying. This is one thing. So they bundled all in one. And the second thing is basically that it's the simplicity. I mean, you only have it all bundled in like one data provider, right? You don't need to connect different tools. But the biggest one, which has also the biggest like business impact, what we've seen is that they are now able to reach more people, right? I think it's super simple maths. For example, if you take a cold calling campaign, right? Let's say you have 100 people and they have also like a high ACV, right? Meaning a very high average contract value, let's say 10,000 euros or $10,000. And if you take like a single provider, most likely you will find, let's say, 40 mobile numbers, right? If it's like if it's a good provider. And of course, they most likely won't be all valid. This is like basically the case for sure. But let's just say you're able to like reach out to 20 of them, right? You have a connection to them, which would be like already super high. And now you were able to reach out to 20 revenue opportunities, right? But if you're now able to, or if you're now using waterfall enrichment, right, you like might be able to find 60 or 70 mobile numbers, right, with also like a higher validity per number. And now you are able to reach out to, let's say, 30, 40 people, right? And I think the maths is like quite quickly mathing, right? If you say it like that, because basically you have like a way bigger pipeline now. You have like a way um, bigger potential like revenue, right? Which is like all about in business, right? So yeah, this is like the big business impacts that we've seen. Besides like cost efficiency and like just like operational efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge because like the number of times I've had a freckle or clay table and I've lost a lot of leads because I've not had data for
Yeah,
them. But then the other thing that you raise is sometimes it will come out as verified when in fact it's not. And actually, what you're doing is you're doing all of the checks. So actually, you're getting additional boosts as well. So you're just completely maximizing both, which is super
yeah,
interesting. So
yeah,
yeah,
and
sorry, mate, carry on.
yeah, and like something I wanted to add here before we go like to the next aspect, right? I mean something which is really hard to understand for me from time to time, like also like for like very large organizations, right? They invest a lot in intent data, they invest a lot in marketing, they invest like tons of cash in like different tools to like identify people that are interesting to buy, right? And then they spend like a lot of money, right, on a list of people that they should reach out to now, and then ultimately they have like a provider which allows them, facilitates them to only reach out to like 40% of that, right? And I mean, yeah, I mean, this is like the step which ultimately connects you to the person, right? And I mean, if you spend so much money by now, right? I don't see like any reason why you shouldn't like pay a few more cents to like also reach out more of that list which you like invested so much in, right? So this is just like something to consider, which is like also some market education, which is like super important.
Yeah, because you can't take like the size of the database and even like their quality numbers. You've then got to you know, because you're still going to be losing a lot, and so you're kind of the necessary bolt on to that, to the data source that you need. Like you need it, otherwise you're missing out an
Exactly,
opportunity. So
exactly. In a way, yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if you spend so much money and you cannot reach out to them, right? I mean, you know by now, based on these intent signals, that these are like people that need your solution now, but you just can't reach them. Then this is, of course, like totally worthless in a way. So yeah, this is how like we think about it and also position what like we do.
nice. In terms of, because you mentioned earlier about tier one, tier two, tier three, how do you define those tiers, and how did that evolve over time? Like for example, I know that Clay, they have a matrix and they do it based on account score. Is it low or high? And then they have it based on engagement. How do they know Clay and they're engaging with Clay, or how do you? Because I remember you saying you either phone them, you LinkedIn them, or you send them to an automated call.
Yep.
So how do you work out who's tier one, tier two, tier three?
Yeah, so I mean, we basically have like a strong ICP and a weak ICP and like all the rest, right? I mean, it's basically all around focusing on tier one and then also in a way a bit on tier two, right? But the rest, this is something which we pushed for like a full PLG experience, meaning that they receive an email, here's a sign up, please sign in if you're interested, and then they basically are being sold by the product, right? And like not by like any additional human resource like myself or like the SCR or whatever. So yeah, I mean, this is how we handle it. Like tier three is basically those that don't match like tier two or tier one qualities, and this is not really based on engagement, but rather like on a very strictly defined ICP on these tier ones and tier twos. And yeah, tier one is basically 100% match with this like very strict ICP, and then tier two is like 80% match, and like above until like 99% basically.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting. You're focusing all your sales resource on the highest tier. Um, let,
Yeah, for
let's
sure.
do a quick fire round, and then we can wrap up. So um, we did kind of talk about this at the start, but what made you to start Better Contact? Like, I imagine the problem you're solving now may not have been the problem why you got into this. So, what made you start Better Contact?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, it's actually a problem that I had myself, right? What I said at the beginning, right? I worked in startups in corporate, and my job was weirdly like always in a way to build lists for expansion, right? For expanding into new markets. And yeah, basically the big pain was to having multiple like data providers going to data provider one, uploading a spreadsheet, like putting in the verification, seeing what's left, right? So super tedious process, super manual. And yeah, this is like the reason why Fred, who's my co-founder, and myself, we basically seen this needs to be brought to market, such a solution, because this is like a very important, I would say, yeah, aspect like data enrichment, being able to reach out to people, it's like essential for every sales team. So this is like the reason why we brought it to market.
Yeah, it's interesting how many like founders like yourself worked at a startup, had a massive pain, and then
Yeah.
built a product. Um, what are the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to waterfall enrichment that they're seeing at the moment? And yeah, where are people going wrong?
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest that I've been seeing like over and over is um, just putting like the data providers based on cost in that order, right? I mean, you can, for example, see in Clay, what I see very often, you put the one with the lowest credit cost, right? And then you just like see what comes out. But I mean, ultimately, especially, for example, on the mobile phone side, the verification layers aren't very strong, which are like offered in like most tools, meaning that how it like ultimately plays out, you have like the phone number like from the lowest cost provider, right? Then you bring it to your sales team, it's invalid, right? Then you go to the next one, you have to basically re-enrich it, right? So it's like a super tedious and also very time consuming process. So this is something where I would definitely advise to see which data provider is the best, right? Because ultimately it most likely makes sense to um, yeah, put like one which isn't like the cheapest, but one which is like good, right? Which is giving you the good number from the start, because ultimately you will need to request anyways if you want to reach out to that lead, right? So I think this is super important. And yeah, this goes hand in hand with like this what I've said at the also at the beginning, that it's super important to really pay attention to validation, right? Because just one of these providers provided you with like a um, data point, most likely based on our data, like 27% of the times or higher, it's like invalid. So proper verification is super important if you don't want to like jump back and forth between like re-enriching, going back, trying if it's good. Yeah, I think these are like the most important ones, and yeah, it's like all about testing.
Yeah, you've fully convinced me, because the last thing we want to have is some tier one, tier two accounts come in, and maybe they come inbound, they're really really strong, and you've pulled the wrong mobile number, and then you've got to go back, waste time, enrich. Like y- you're missing out. You could be
Yeah,
missing out on some real sales opportunities.
100%. And I mean, this is like a great example you've brought. I mean, I was now more thinking about the outbound side, right? But if you have a very promising lead coming inbound, right? I mean, everyone knows how important it is to like contact them as quickly as possible, right? I think I saw some stats that if you do it within the first 60 seconds, right, the chances of you converting them is like 5 times higher if you do it like after 90 seconds or something like that, right? So, and then if you like have a mediocre data provider, right, and you get the wrong mobile number, then you need to like go to another one, right? And you might have already decreased your like chance of yeah, basically converting them quite quickly, right? Because your competitors might have like a better setup, and they're already like have them on the phone, right?
Yeah, the cost of like speed to lead. Like if you don't get the right contact data, you've lost. You know, chances
Yep.
drop off a cliff. Um, okay, final question then, because I know you probably want to crack on very soon. But where can people kind of find more about Better Contact? Where can they learn? Where can they connect with you? Where should people go if they want to if they want to kind of just, if they're maybe a tier three account and they want to self serve? What should they do if maybe they're a
Yep.
bigger account? What should they do?
Yeah, for sure. So we're actively on LinkedIn, right? So we're like engaging there a lot. We're also sharing content, which hopefully is also useful, right? So it's not just saying BetterContact is the best tool, like what we do is amazing. It's really like sharing data reports. It's like sharing like case studies and like all of that. Um, and yeah, so on LinkedIn, but also of course on like our website chat, right? We're also like active there. Both like also like the founders, right? Fred and myself. And yeah, if you want to learn more about Better Contact, we also have a YouTube channel, and of course on the website there is like a good amount of information, and it's like free to sign up. There is like no credit card needed. It's like basically just putting in an email, and then yeah, I'd be like super keen to like help out on the product side and like answer any questions whatsoever. And yeah, that's
I
basically it.
love it. And final question, final question. What's next for you now? Like, what are your priorities for the next 6 months? What are you focusing on?
Yeah. Yeah, so what we very recently launched is actually our waterfall lead finder, right? We were always like these like last 3 years very dialed in into like email and mobile enrichment, right? And this will stay our focus, but we also launched like a waterfall lead finder, right? This is a very big gap we see on the market, right? Because if you want to somehow, especially via API, want to find good leads, right? And want to find leads which are fresh and also a good amount of leads, then there is like no LinkedIn API, obviously, right? They want to like keep the people on the platform, the data, right? So this is basically impossible. The Apollo data, everyone knows, is like pretty mediocre, right? And they also are cracking down on the API, right? So there's like a pretty big need right now. That's why we're like doubling down on that. We also aggregate multiple databases, right? And also having some type of live web crawl verification, right? That this data is actually fresh, the job title is fresh, and all of that. So it's a very big project that we're really focusing on. And yeah, so basically that, and of course, keep iterating on the email and phone verification on the provider side. We keep testing. So if there's any like provider that we should add, that we should try. We also recently started like a bounty program, and we paid the first bounty actually a few days ago, where we paid like 1K to a person that provided us a provider that we weren't aware of, and we integrated them. So yeah, if there's anything, please reach out via email, via LinkedIn, whatever. And yeah,
Wow, awesome. I'll add all of your links to description as well. But yeah, I just want to say, Roman, thanks for coming on today. I'm not just saying this, but I'm genuinely thinking I need to have a look at BetterContact now. So that's what you want. So yeah, thank you for sharing today
thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate it. It's nice.
awesome.